Podcast. I'm Nick McDaniel. He's Myron Fancher. How the heck are you, buddy?
Oh, I'm all shiny and ready to go, Nick. Uh, Tiresome weekend. I want to talk about wrestling. How about you?
Well, we're going to talk about a couple things in wrestling. Obviously, we'll get into the news here in a minute, but then we're going to get into the rotation of the schedule is now is the top 10 episode in. This week, we're going with the top 10 greatest mic workers in wrestling history.
This is fun.
Look, by the way, it's our opinion and our opinion only. If you disagree, you can send that, of course, to tappedoutpod@gmail.com because we'd love to hear your top 10. And listen, if you're a Patreon member over on patreon.com/tappedoutpod and you're listening on there, put it in the comments. Who's your top 10? Who's your top 3, top 5, whatever. But we'd love to hear your top 10 again on patreon.com/tappedoutpod. Look, but we get it. If you're a YouTube watcher, simply all we ask for you is like the video, subscribe to the channel, turn that click that little bell to turn that notification on so you don't miss a single episode every single week. 2 episodes on the Tapped Out Podcast Network where you get the Tapped In Indie Wrestling Podcast and then, of course, the Tapped Out Wrestling Podcast that you're listening to now. And look, man, there's a lot of stuff to get into before we get into the top 10 list here. Before we jump into that, I was going to ask you, man, so I'm watching Raw last night, and I'm watching promos, of course, because it's promo season when you're going into WrestleMania. You're supposed to talk me into the building at WrestleMania, and look, I'm excited about WrestleMania in the sense of it's WrestleMania. It's always going to be what it is. It's the granddaddy of them all that kind of stuff or whatever. But so far, storyline-wise, I'm a little underwhelmed as far as the lead-in to WrestleMania so far. And I'm curious, I know you said you kind of disagree a little bit, and if you are excited, tell me why. I guess is the biggest reason.
I have one small complaint. It's the fact that anything John Cena does or says, they're using over and over, and for segments, bits, it's taking up. He says something on one show, the entire next show is just a replay of him saying it.
Correct.
Other people aren't getting enough mic time to put this over. Okay, this Penta and Breaker feud they got coming up, they need more time. The whole thing with Gunther.
Well, here's the problem. Last night they clearly are going in a different direction. I think we're getting a 4-way with Penta, Braun, with Braun Breaker, Dominic, and Finn Balor. We're going to get a 4-way probably for the Intercontinental title.
See, that's ridiculous. The women actually are plotting theirs out really well so far. Charlotte is doing a great job.
Yes,
harassing Tiffany. I really think the whole Rhea thing is going to play out real well with Bianca and Io Sky. The lower women's titles, I'm just going to be watching for Chelsea Green. I mean, because she's worth watching whatever she's doing.
Can I pause right there? I want you to answer this, and it really matters. I'm sorry to cut you off there. I want you to hear this. They're proving that there's too many women's titles.
Yeah. Laura Valkyrie, whatever you want to call her, has that title. No one knows she has that title. I don't remember she has that title. If you were to ask me who has that title, the women's Intercontinental title, I couldn't tell you. I would forget. She can't. I mean, the only thing Vince Russo has ever said I agree with, she'll never get over with that gimmick. And he's right. But there's parts that are like, oh, God, CM Punk, Roman Reigns, Seth Rollins, Paul Heyman, what's that drama? Not even a title match. That wouldn't even be the main event. Totally.
They're talking about that main eventing one night.
Well, maybe so. Well, it's got me. That's got me.
Hold on. So you're going to put it over one of your world titles?
Oh. Okay, I don't know. All I know is I got the timer downloaded. What did the timer I downloaded say? The timer I downloaded, time to Raw. It's like 24 days and a bunch of minutes and stuff from the time we're recording. So the time people hear this, it's going to be 3 weeks next. So that's going to wind up being, by the time people hear this, that's 1 SmackDown, 2, 3. It's not long for them to do this. They do not have enough time to finish this.
So are you actually converting on air?
No, I'm not converting. There are things they've got really well that's going well. But there's pieces. There's so many people that don't have a match on this WrestleMania.
Okay, here again. Well, the question was, has the road to WrestleMania been underwhelming? No, I'm asking, and what I mean by that, I'm not saying there's nothing they're doing good. They have to fill 2 nights. Right now, I don't feel like they have 2 nights worth of WrestleMania.
I hate this when you make me think about stuff and maybe reconsider stuff. It's like being married to you.
Look, it's an opinion. No, it's an
This is
opinion.
what Melissa does to me. She makes me rethink my opinions. But
your
you're right.
opinion.
There's a point.
Yeah, I'm not saying you could be absolutely thrilled with the way it's going, and you're not wrong. It's how you feel about it. That was me just saying I'm feeling underwhelmed because 2 things. One, by the way, there's 3 weeks. They can change my mind. You had 2. When I mean underwhelming, the John Cena promos were good. They weren't great. You even said the second one felt like a rinse repeat of the first one.
Yeah, and they're showing them over and over, and it's not giving. I mean, I know it is. It's John Cena heel turn. It's the biggest news ever in professional wrestling. It's tearing my heart out, tearing everyone. My kid would finish that Photoshop for me. I really wish that would be nice. I wanted her to Photoshop me on that little kid's face and body. If anybody hears this, please Photoshop me on the little kid from Belgium. There's things I'm super excited for. There's things I really don't care about. And there's things that should be developing that aren't. So I guess if I were to give it a grade, I'd give it a B, maybe a B minus.
Yeah. I think my biggest question is the cornerstone of your WrestleMania is underwhelming to me right now. The Cody John Cena thing, I'm not saying I'm not intrigued, and I'm not saying they can't recover quickly. Just saying at the moment of us recording, 12:37 p.m. on a Tuesday, after watching John Cena speak twice, I never thought I would hear 2 John Cena promos hyping me for a match at WrestleMania, and I'm a little underwhelmed. By now, because here's the thing, why? He's told us why he's heel, but why did he align with The Rock?
No clue. I still haven't got that part.
Yeah, that's what I mean by when I say underwhelming a little bit. Look, I'm excited a little bit for Jay and Gunther, but in general, it's kind of been like, okay, did they – I don't know. Here's where we may be. We may just be there's just too much damn TV between Rumble and Mania at this point that, like, I don't know, should they even – how do you pull that off for that many weeks between the two?
I would say pull the 30, 45 minutes of replays that they're putting of the Cena promos, cut them back to maybe 15 minutes and give somebody else some time in there to get their stories over. But that's
Could
me.
Be.
That's me, producer Myron.
Well, speaking of cutting.
God,
let's jump in real quick. I know you just wanted to talk about it's happened after we recorded last week, folks. So if you're wondering why are we talking about a thing that happened basically when you're listening to us, it would be 8 days ago, but for us it's 6 days ago.
The thing is, the minute we set the mic down, somebody does something really stupid. And of course we're talking about the return of Spike TV. Nick, why did Jon Moxley take that spike to his back, all those spikes to his back, and let them stick? It's one thing if he were to take dull ones and they didn't stick, but he lets those stick and hold that.
Listen, I think he's all in the sense of if you're going to do it to where it looks good in the sense of the word, and I'm saying that by the presentation of it. High risk, dude. If one of those things sticks in his spine or something like that, and who knows? It was.
I give the guy credit, Nick. He's trying to put this whole company on his back. Anytime they ask something for him, he does it. He is the guy. He is the company man. But this was a television show.
I don't think he got asked to do this. That's the problem. I think this is his decision. But there's a part of it that would ask, they had this stipulation of where it was basically anything goes and, blah, blah, blah. That was really the only thing that was kind of over the top in this match, by the way.
Yeah. It was a street fight.
Basically, yeah. I mean, that's what I'm saying. Like, in general, everything else was meh. And I know you had the question of why you do this in front of it. They had the blizzard in Omaha.
Yeah.
If you're going to do it, you're just going to go ahead and do it. Because here's, by the way, it ain't about just the number of people in the crowd. It's the TV, how it presented. It looked cool on TV. If you're into that kind of thing, I mean, a lot of people were like, "Oh my God, it was so cool." All right, if you're,
I always worry about TV contracts. when they see this. Always worried that WB is
I
going to, and I this is one thing. Our next topic is big, but when I found out that WB does not consider that AEW to be a legitimate sports product or a combat sport, they consider it to be entertainment.
Sure.
That's going to affect our next contract issue that's going to be coming up, and that's a lot bigger than AEW. It's the UFCs.
Yeah. So what you brought up is so a lot of people may not be aware. UFC's deal with ESPN ends at the end of the year, and they're kind of shopping around like who gets their content. For those who are not aware, I'm not super. I am on the fringe edge of UFC as far as watching it and keeping up with the business side of it. But I have a friend who keeps up with it pretty well, and he was trying to explain to me that look, an ESPN Plus is where a lot of their pay-per-views, and when the ones you buy through ESPN, whatever. Apparently, it's been issue after issue after issue. So it's like ESPN's disappointed with the buys. But then again, people are like, yeah, when we buy the thing, it crashes, or it's
that's what Dana White was saying. He's frustrated with the technical issues
Correct.
from ESPN. He wants a better thing, and he also wants a better deal.
Correct.
WB has access to their own streaming service.
Correct. Listen, the main one of look, let's get this one out of the way because everybody's going to ask. Everybody just naturally assumed that Netflix makes the most sense, that they're going to just bring them right over. They got a partnership with WWE. They're all in the same company. Let's just roll them over and, say, hey, put all the products and just pay them a big lump check up front and they can just air. They don't have to worry about pay-per-views. They just get the content, and basically every weekend there's fights. Think about it. It's almost going to be every Saturday and Sunday there's either a UFC fight or a WWE PLE on.
How do you beat
eventually.
that, man? How do you beat
now,
that?
But remember, that's the world. We're stuck with Peacock. And by the way, the rumor is we're still going to be stuck with Peacock after. When this cycle rolls over, that Peacock ain't going away. It's Peacock's going to win this deal. And we were not getting PLEs and stuff on Netflix. That's a whole conversation for another.
So we're
episode.
stuck. This is one thing we got to think about with the fact that the network is gone. All the pay-per-views are on Peacock. Half the shows and most of the shows are eventually going to wind up on Netflix. Half of
I don't think
the library is on YouTube. It's too much division. Put it back in the same place, please.
It's the best business decision WWE has ever made. I'm gonna tell you why. We got sidebarred here for a second. I promise you, we'll dive into it. Netflix is never paying the increased amount it would cost of money they're going to get for SmackDown off of television. They're never going to pay think about this. If they wanted it all, they've got to cover essentially the USA difference and the Peacock difference to get that little, to get the PLEs and SmackDown over on Netflix. WWE is going to be like, okay, that's going to cost you roughly, I think it was $250 and five. It's going to cost you about $750 million. They're not paying that for those couple shows. So basically, let's just round it up. It's going to cost you another $1 billion a year to get those products in the United States as well.
Well, let's see how the test trial goes.
It's not worth the difference. To me, it's just bluntly not worth the difference that they're going to get by just adding those shows. They're not going to get the bump enough because here's the reason. You're not gaining that many new subscribers by adding SmackDown because you've already got Raw.
Yeah, okay. I get that.
So, but if you leave it on TV, you're getting USA's money. By the way, we didn't even discuss the CW deal with NXT.
Well, that deal right there, that would be a foolish not to take that deal out and put that somewhere else.
Well,
Unless
they're going to
CW
get that. They'll get an
kind of
increase.
bidding.
That one's going to get an increase. But that's my whole point. To get them all to Netflix, it would cost so much money incrementally. They're not paying the gap. Anyway, back to our original point here. Go ahead.
How long is the AEW TV deal?
Off the top of my head, I need you to ask me. I think it's 5 with outs at 3 or something like that, or something.
Well,
but that's not the concern.
NXT is crushing it in ratings. That would be. They should get a bigger deal than them, in my opinion.
They will.
When it comes time,
CW's deal is
It's insane, man. We're talking
So
contract for professional wrestling in these levels. When as a kid, the stuff was done in look like
they were paying for TV. They were paying for
yeah,
promotions were paying the TV station for TV. Yeah.
so they
So
could
anyway,
sell
back
tickets.
yeah. So back to our point. So UFC was just a naturally assumed it was a Netflix thing, done deal. Warner Brothers Discovery has since come out and expressed interest in the UFC, saying like, "Hey, maybe because we've got a streaming service, we got." But here's the crazy thing: they were talking about what if we aired stuff on TNT? They could air the free shows on TNT every Saturday, and then do the PLEs. They're not PLE. They're pay-per-views actually through the Max service because guess what? They're going to get into the live streaming business because of AEW.
Yeah.
So by the time this deal's rolled out, they'll already be doing that. They'll be able to do pay-per-view purchases because they're going to do it for AEW. They'll be already ready, set up to do that for UFC as well. Problem is, think about the calendar I just put in your head. The free shows would air on Saturdays on TNT. Guess what's on TNT on Saturdays?
AEW pay-per-views.
No, Collision.
Collision. Oh.
On TV, not on pay-per-view, on TV.
Because you'd want to put the pre-show fights.
No, it literally would lap
TV,
over.
No,
they
Oh,
do
your market
freebies.
laps over.
You freebie it over. There are free fight weekends. They were talking about putting the fight weekends of free, or the pre-fight. Well, even on the pay-per-view weekends, whether you're doing a pay-per-view, those pre-shows would run when Collision runs. So if it's on TNT, now there's an easy answer because everybody asks me, "Hey, what would you do?" Well, simple. They moved Dynamite. Dynamite's on TBS. You just would move Collision to TBS as well. So then all of your wrestling is on TBS, and your fights, the UFC stuff would be on TNT.
I don't see why anybody just doesn't move everything to Amazon if they're selling pay-per-view by the piece like AEW does. I know they're billing. Now you can buy AEW pay-per-views on Amazon.
Mm-hmm.
But these UFC pay-per-views, you're going to buy them by the piece and not subscription. I would put them on Amazon first because they have the history of being able to do that kind of thing.
Yeah, but the UFC market though, they're trying to, like they do with ESPN, they're trying to come in with a partner because you're going to have a free content provider, like where you're not charging every week. So let's get that deal up front, and then so it's got to be their partner. Almost has to be somebody who's willing to air the. Netflix is a little more convoluted, in my opinion, in the sense of because you don't have a free product, like a free thing. It's just going to be subscribing based. So we'll have to see how that all plays out.
Yeah,
but
yeah.
But now
it's a lot of talking.
Yeah, lots of stuff going on. But, man, let's jump into the top 10 greatest mic workers in wrestling history. That's the top of this way. Remember, guys, we're encouraging you, please, tappedoutpod@gmail.com. Patreon members, you can do right in there in the comments. Just give us your top 10 list. If you agree, you disagree, all of those things. We would love to hear it. But let's dive right into number 10. Myron, I know he's one of your absolute favorites. And we're going with Mick Foley.
Finally got his autograph this year at WrestleCade. I was so happy about that. Got a picture with him. Mick Foley. 3 personalities. Mankind. Yeah. Cactus Love. Oh, sorry. Dude Love. Cactus Jack. That was a messed up. But he's probably done that one before. And you wanted to talk about the list of stuff he's done, Nick. And so I went back and started looking at his famous promos. Was Kane Dewey the one that really struck out like and got you in emotion?
Yeah, it's one of his most famous promos of all time. He's basically, it was funny. He was trying to be an ECW. He was kind of doing like an anti-hardcore character. Like when he realized like these fans will never be, and it's kind of funny because it's
John Cena.
It's really truth.
But he's also doing John Cena 2025, a little bit of it. It's a little, oh God, everything's new, old again.
It is.
Or whatever you say. But this was beautiful. I mean, and he was trying to stop Tommy Dreamer from hurting himself or going over. He's like, I'm going to drag you into signing with Uncle Eric. And I love this.
I mean, it's, look, his some of his most famous ones are This Is Your Life with The Rock, obviously, one of the highest rated segments on all history. Of course, by the way, I know a lot of people like to give him credit for the promo when he did the Cactus Jack reveal with Triple H leading into the Rumble in 2000. Here's the funny thing is, the promo was great. I also say if Triple H doesn't sell it, it doesn't really work as well.
If Triple H didn't set it up, okay, that was a very long promo to set up. I watched the whole thing again last night. God, this was fun preparing for this. I watched the whole thing again last night. It's a long promo to set up. It took a lot of stuff to get Mick in the position to start this promo. Man. And some of the other ones he had, dude, some of the other ones.
Yeah, and arguably a lot of people think that is probably one of his, when we're talking about like his best promo against his biggest opponents, Triple H, I think, was one of his biggest ones, especially in WWE, because that's what most people are going to remember.
Oh, yeah.
Was that reveal in 2000, leading up to the Rumble. So Mick Foley is our number 10. Number 9, Chris Jericho. We'll probably get some pushback on this one a little bit.
I love this. I love this. You remember Chris Jericho in WCW with Ralphus and his starting his gimmick and doing and getting warmed up. And then he comes to WWE and makes his Y2J entrance. And this was a time where The Rock was so dead on. This was I mean, he comes out, he does or whatever. I'm not good at making those noises. Chris Jericho comes out and he gives that long speech, and then The Rock asks for his name again. He goes, "It doesn't matter what your name is." Could it got more interesting than this back in but when this was happening, and I know I'm maybe on the old nostalgia hook here, but this was beautiful. And the list, you just made the list.
Yeah, I mean, look, he's always been, really good as back and forth. Like you said, when he debuted, had the interaction with Rock. How cool is that to put him on the biggest stage of all, with the biggest star, probably, at the time, you could argue. A bunch of other things, of course, like, but I like him. I'm more like, I love some of the realistic based stuff. Is like, when him and Shawn had their feud in 2008. When he's in MJF in 2021, they're kind of going back and forth. I think, to me, the Shawn Michaels stuff ranks up there because here's the thing. It's so personal because kind of Jericho wanted to be Shawn Michaels. Like, that's who he wanted to be, essentially. And so it was kind of like, I know a lot of people maybe don't see it necessarily, but I think that the way they built it up, and then the accidental Pam, he nails the wife, and it leads all of this stuff, essentially is the rocket ship to his heel turn there. And how better to do it against Shawn Michaels, obviously, because Shawn Michaels he's freaking Shawn Michaels. It makes it pretty simple. So that puts Chris Jericho at our number 9. Number 8, Paul Heyman. I debated he probably should be higher on this one.
Higher?
I do think he potentially. But look, I got it. It's easier to say it. Like, in my gut reaction was higher, but then when you start putting him in order, look, I'm okay with where he's at. But you know what I mean? Like, when you first see it, your gut reaction is probably should be higher.
I don't even know if I'm putting an order on this list in my head. To me, it's more top 10 without it's just 10 people. Because, I mean, Heyman's great. Thank God he got rid of that black leather duster and baseball cap. That was the part. I like him much better in his suit and his bald head now. The wise man, Paul Heyman. He's killing it on promos. But that one night stand promo and pointing at Eric Bischoff and that was so cool. And calling out Test for cheating with Matt Hardy's wife.
Edge, you mean? Or...
Oh, sorry, Edge.
Yeah,
I was thinking Test.
But that, like, in his heat,
another one.
Yeah, it might the trench coat and the hat, like, that's him. That embodies him when he's in that run of his ECW days. Speeches to the locker room, and we would see him on air. Obviously, the one night stand, like you said, but it also led to arguably, I think, one of his best ones ever. And this is up for great debate. The whole "My name is Paul Heyman" with Brock Lesnar, Roman Reigns. Obviously, there's a whole generation that's kind of what they know. But when they were leading up to that Survivor Series, where it was basically the alliance, and him and Vince McMahon going back and forth at the podiums, arguably still won because basically it was Vince let him just shoot everything he felt. And so it was so real. That's what made it unforgettable, is that it was just his emotion pouring out right there on that stage. In the ring, the podium, face to face. How cool it would be if there's somebody that you just absolutely spent your entire career fighting, and you could finally get them face to face, and they're telling you, just unload the barrels on me.
Oh God, yeah. I never had that big an enemy, but if I did, this would be the.
Yeah,
gotta love Paul. Gotta love Paul.
So Paul Heyman at number 8. This one this is kind of an old school, probably that talks a little bit. Number 7 is Jake the Snake Roberts. Why does he stand out for me personally? It's because he didn't stand there and scream and shout and like at the top of his lung. He would tell people the reason you do that is they lean in. They have to hear, because they get invested. Like, what, and so they get in, and that just obviously. Plus his promos. I remember being a kid and hearing promos and going, "Am I smart enough to understand this?" Like sometimes. And I was a smart kid. I mean, I really was. And I was like, you know what I mean? Like, they were just, sometimes I felt like, is this over my head or
when he got it? It was too scary. It was way too psychological for kids our age to understand. It was that thing Kevin Sullivan did, where he gave you that weird creep out, and Jake was going to be that weird creep out. He was going to be the guy that brought a snake, which is everybody's scared of snakes. If you're not, there's something wrong with you. But he'd get you and he'd draw you in, and then he'd manipulate you the way he was manipulating those people. I slapped Miss Elizabeth. Snake bit Randy. How dastardly could you get? And when he came out, he didn't ever like yell or anything. It was just this that Kate. Yeah, scary as a kid, still scary. I watched them over last night. They still got me just as good as they did back then.
Yeah, he's it's arguably still, by the way, we catch him from time to time at Southern Honor when he's there tucking a promo, and he's still good. God bless him. Yeah, Jake the Snakes, number 7, man. It's awesome. Number 6, I know we're going to catch heat for this one because everybody's going to say he should probably be higher. Number 6, CM Punk. Why does he make the list? Because either it seems to be, Myron, you love him or you hate him, and there's nowhere in between.
I didn't care for CM Punk until this run, and this current run he's on has made me really appreciate him. Sorry, I'm not talking about this current feud. The Drew McIntyre feud has been amazing. The promos for this feud with Seth Rollins and Roman Reigns have been amazing. He's a captivating speaker. He makes you care. He points out the problems. The pipe bomb was, when they cut the mic on the pipe bomb, that was so realistic. It was. How much is realism? What do you think on that?
Of what he said? Oh, it's probably all of how he felt. I mean, yeah, it just, they were like, go out there and say it. We're just fully aware of what you're going to say. I mean, that's kind of what he does. I think if you can't script him, because he does best when he, is just feeling it. Like, it's, hey, this is like legit. These are things that I feel or whatever. Or even sometimes they're like, hey, I'm going to amplify it. I'm going to exaggerate it a little bit, but still kind of the same case. And that's kind of, look, he did it when he returned at Rampage. He did it obviously with the pipe bomb. Lots of stuff, whatever. Like, look, I think some of his best work, I know a lot of people say MJF and Eddie Kingston. Me personally, I will always think that some of his stuff with John Cena during that 2011-ish run, in that kind of area, when they were going back and forth with the title, that was his best work, in my opinion. And I know some people even harp back to his Ring of Honor stuff, but I just think that in the grand scheme of things, that's kind of where I remember him as at his best. But here's the thing. If you listen, obviously, to what I said a minute ago, the underwhelming piece of WrestleMania, he's one of the parts that I feel like is absolutely delivering going into WrestleMania. So I'm really high on what he's doing right now. So
Yeah, I got to give him that. I'm loving what he's doing. He's carrying it, most of it, in my opinion. I'm really glad to see someone on the list still performing out there. Paul, CM Punk, It just makes my heart smile. But talking about the guy, we'll go to the next one. What's the number
All
on this
right.
one?
So number 5, John Cena.
Nah, nah,
Um,
nah.
I've made the case, and I've said it, last week, this week. Do I think? Look, let's get into the positive. He's, when he's on, and like when I don't want to say when he's motivated, but when he has it, like when he is clicking on all cylinders, I'd make the case he's one of the best of all times.
Yes.
He absolutely, look, by the way, you're talking about a guy whose promo, quote unquote, used to be rap battles. I mean, by the way,
he was a
legit
rapper.
him. Yeah.
He was a rapper. He was a cracker ass white rapper, and he did well.
Mm.
He made little kids want to be him. He sold all the merchandise in the world. He got people shaking their hands in front of the face. Okay, you can't see me. He says it's a joke now. You didn't like the second pay-per-view. I thought it was mediocre. The first pay-per-view was amazing. The pay-per-view that he did to put himself in the elimination chamber was amazing. The old pay-per-views where he established himself in a time where he was following some of the bigger stars and had to establish himself. I can't say enough about John Cena.
Look, some of his best stuff. Obviously, we brought up. Look, we talked about CM Punk on the list before him. Some of the stuff with Edge, but look, the stuff with Roman Reigns. I mean, when he essentially cooked him, literally live on TV, and he's kind of like, it's called a promo, kid. If you're going to do this, you got to get good. It's like, oh, geez. Look, we also called him a bootleg John Cena. But then also, look, this one's not in the notes, but I remember them. Do you remember when The Rock had his notes on his arm, and he called him out for it on TV? And they're doing that. This was back when they did their 2-match thing at WrestleMania. Rock's got his notes on his wrist, and he basically calls him out on TV. By the way, his since come out and said that was unprofessional. I shouldn't have done it. Blah 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 blah. So kind of crazy.
Now that he works with The Rock, he comes out and says things like that.
Yeah. He's like, now it's like,
but this we're getting into your favorite territory here. I know.
Look, a lot of the stuff. Yeah, look, I love that. I mean, like I say, John Cena, number 3, I think is absolutely easily. I'm sorry, number 5. Sorry, is a real simple choice. Number 4, Stone Cold Steve Austin. Look, I don't really know if we need to say more than Austin 316. Greatest catchphrase, some would argue. Greatest. It is the highest selling probably T-shirt other than the NWO stuff. It may have outsold it at this.
Still
who
selling.
knows?
Still selling. You can go to any show and they're still selling it. People still wear it everywhere you go. People actually wear it outside that aren't wrestling fans. You see it on the street and people know what it is. This promo did that. The beer truck versus the milk truck.
Yeah, I mean, look. How many times did you see Mike Tyson and him go back and forth where they shove each other on ESPN?
Yeah.
That's a promo. Like when it gets that point where it's over on ESPN, that's kind of it. But yeah, I mean, listen, the reason why he's on the list is because real simple, dude. He's got legendary promos with Vince, Rock, Triple H, Kurt Angle, on and on. Some of the comedy stuff that he did with Kurt Angle is just classic stuff. And that's the diversity of your promo skills is when you can do the I'm gonna kick your or I'm gonna be like joking funny, and that's some of the funny stuff he did. The comedy stuff with Kurt is arguably some of his best stuff. But
I agree.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's Stone Cold number 4. Number 3, pretty simple choice by everybody's measures when they know me.
I was
people
surprised
are gonna be
you didn't put him in higher.
I struggled not putting him higher, and honestly probably wished I had by the time I did. Number 3, of course, is Dusty Rhodes. Look, why does he make the list? Real simple. He's my favorite wrestler of all time. No, but he's also the working man's hero, man. That's it. Says it all. Like anybody, the casual watcher could look at Dusty and be like, I could be that guy. Like you could be a guy sitting, and I was too young at the time, but when Dusty's wrestling, you could be a 30, 40-year-old dude sitting there drinking beer and be like, I'm built like that guy. I can do that. You couldn't, but you would think that you could. And yeah,
just to think about all the people he's influenced over the years when he was teaching. When he was with NXT and prior to that, uh, how much Dusty made, how much of an impact Dusty made is amazing. But Hard Times, to me, is still the most recognizable promo of all time. It's the one that comes up the most in casual, as a wrestling fan, in casual conversation with non-wrestling fans. I'll say Hard Times. Oh, yeah, I can't do Dusty's voice for shit. But yeah, I say this one over and over and over again. Dusty was the man. He had that cadence. He had that lisp. He baby, and they put him in that polka dot suit, and he still killed it
mm-hmm.
with his talking ability and his wrestling ability and his charisma and his charm. And nobody really has duplicated that much of everything.
Yeah, I agree. Like, look, his stuff going into Starrcade with Ric Flair, that was kind of the peak stuff. Obviously, the stuff with Kevin Sullivan, I had a lot of that from Florida. Just to hear him talking about the fight, he basically was like, I'm fighting the devil, because of Kevin Sullivan, on and on and on. But here's the thing: even as Dusty's, people would say, even when his in-ring ability started to deteriorate. I mean, Dusty was literally like an older dude that could still talk people into the building, understanding the concept of, I'm probably going to get some punches, some elbows, and maybe the big elbow to finish, but they're going to beat on Dusty for a while. Dusty might bleed.
Might.
I'm just saying, like, you kind of knew what you were going to get in the match. And by wrestling standards, a lot of people would argue that, hey, the matches just weren't that good. I would argue they were, because you really cared and you were invested into it. But Dusty didn't really have a problem talking you into the building still, which is kind of crazy when you think about it.
Yeah. When I pass around old clips and talk to people about old wrestling, it wasn't about quality of matches. It was about the matches that either scared me, the matches that got me so invested as a child. I remember them through all of my horrible memory issues, the things like that. And these were the matches Dusty Rhodes did. These are the kind of things Dusty Rhodes did. And not many people made impacts that lasted this long. So I got to give him full credit for that.
Yeah, I mean, and look, at the core, we were going through an era then when it was like, basically the everyman versus the corporate elites. Boy, that sounds familiar. But that's kind of, at the time, that was kind of the beginning. And it was like in its peak, that essentially was Ric Flair and Dusty Rhodes. Like, they embodied that. So that's why when they were talking, we were all in, because, like I said, they weren't just speaking. Dusty, wasn't just speaking for himself. It felt like Dusty's talking for all of us.
Rick was the girl that the guy that took your girlfriend, took your job, and Dusty was that guy that they wrote country music songs about. That were so popular at the time, and you had that definite feeling, and you identified with him. It was beautiful.
I agree, man. So look, we weren't hard pressed to make that argument that Dusty Rhodes is in my top 3. Probably should have been number 1, but Dusty at number 3, which brings us to number 2. Number 1 and 2. Look, when we give 2, people are going to figure out number 1. I got a feeling, don't you think?
Yeah.
But number 2, there was a little pushback from me about putting this guy so high. But I understand. But I do understand. Number 2 is The Rock. Some people argue the most charismatic performer to ever hold the mic, the most electrifying man in sports entertainment, now in all entertainment. Now,
think about it. How many wrestlers are so charismatic they move from inside the ring? What was his Maivia? What was his gimmick?
Rocky Maivia.
Maivia. They go from being Rocky Maivia to the
Listen,
president of all these things.
yeah. At one time, the dude's name was Flex Cavana.
Flex Cavana, that was the one I was looking for. Flex
Okay.
Cavana. He goes from being Flex Cavana, okay, to being on the board of TKO. That is an American success story.
Yeah.
And it was based on his charisma and where he was at the right time. That man made himself so popular with the people, it got him a movie role. And this all worked over based on these promos. This man went farther on promos, in my opinion, than anyone ever did. Now, his wrestling was great, but his promos
No, it
took him
wasn't.
far.
His wrestling was good. It was very, very good.
Nick, we have different standards on wrestling, remember. I like wrestling I identify with and enjoy. And I enjoyed his wrestling and his promos, catchphrases. Finally, okay, it doesn't matter. When he would sing, when he did the whole thing with Mick Foley, the whole "This Is Your Life" rock. I don't think anybody's better than him. I'll be honest.
Look, he does got to look. You would argue that the only other guy might be Austin, with as many catchphrases as they're throwing them around,
Yeah.
But The Rock's got a ton of them. You brought up, yeah. But some of my favorite stuff. I know it's not for everybody, but the singing, like when he does the concerts, the Vicky Guerrero, he's done it to a bunch of people. It's not just Vicky Guerrero, but Vicky Guerrero specifically was some of kind of the funniest stuff that he ever did. Look, so I don't really know, because everybody's like, he's going to play guitar. I'm like, you could call it that. I don't know that I call what he does playing the guitar. I think he maybe knows some notes and he strums the guitar, maybe is a better word. But that, again, comes back to the mic. It's still mic work. It's not in the ring. It's not working or whatever. And look, we brought up John Cena, and some of his best stuff was against The Rock. And some would argue that some of The Rock's best stuff was against Cena, back in the day, as far as the back and forth when they did those 2-year, two manias against each other. It's I thought it was pretty cool. The alliance stuff, some people were big fans of that, but let's go honest. Who's the biggest guy that he ever had the back and forth with that had some of the best promos? I mean, I think it's pretty easy. Won't you agree?
Come on, let me know what your opinion is.
Steve Austin. Him and Steve Austin back and forth. I mean, because they did it for their peak windows. Here's the thing. They were 1A, they were 1A and 1B, and you could slip those and slide those either direction at any given time. I don't know that they were ever, because wrestling was at probably its pop culture peak, maybe. Its hottest. I'm not saying at its height, but at its hottest with those two guys sitting at the top of the food chain. And so when they were going back and forth, I just kind of was like, dude, these are probably the two that we're going to get. To me, Austin and Rock are up there to me with Dusty and Rick when they were going toe to toe.
Okay, I can agree with that. I can agree with
that. So that's my.
I did like Rock and Sock. I do like Rock and Sock a lot.
And then when they do the comedy stuff, that's pretty good. That's what I'm saying. That's what makes a good guy there. So that is the number 2, and that is Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson. Number 1, of course, if you haven't figured it out by now, look, it's not a top 10 without Ric Flair, and if we hadn't heard his name now, you got to assume Ric Flair's number 1, which he is.
Oldest riding apart with the longest line.
Yeah, nobody had his style. Nobody had his swag. And look, there are people out there that wanted to be, and there were people before Rick that quote unquote were the nature boy, but I think did Ric Flair you talked about The Rock talking himself to where he is today. I know a lot of people say Ric Flair is the great, notice a lot of people don't say he's the best wrestler of all time. They'll say like he's the best, like Stone Cold says he's the best world champion of all time.
Makes sense. I agree with that. The belt, the robe, the whole presentation. Da, da. Yeah, I can deal with that. The matches he had, I can see where he's the best champion of all time. Wrestler, No, not so much. But you didn't know. You didn't know Ric Flair was not the greatest wrestler of all time.
He
Okay, you
was at
never.
the time. In our brains, he was because he was the world champion so often.
Yeah,
He was the greatest wrestler of all time.
yeah. As recently as November, Ric Flair cut a promo. We were at a bar in North Carolina, and he told a little person that Ric Flair had. He was like, Ric Flair has slept with 3 midgets. You want to make it 4?
I mean, look, you brought it up. I mean, like I said, he's talking about was Ric Flair, I ask you this, was Ric Flair one of the first guys for you who literally talked his way into your fandom?
Yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah. I didn't have to see Rick wrestle. I got to see Bob Armstrong wrestle and really
It's,
loved his style. That was why Bob Armstrong was my favorite wrestler as a kid, because I liked the whole thing Bob did, and the bad to the bone, and the workout videos and things like that. But Rick, when I saw Rick for the first time in WWE, his talking and his presence is what defined him. And then I went back and watched the old promos and stuff, and it was mind blowing, just absolutely mind blowing that a man could convince you that he was that over. Okay.
let me ask you, because he's got some of the most famous lines of all. Like, people still to say, and by the way, they say it in sports. They say it in just casual conversations. To be the man, you got to beat the man.
Yep.
That's is woo a promo line? Because
it is still in use in sports entertainment to this day.
It is still in use all over the place. That's the problem. They're everywhere. But look, his back and forth with Dusty Rhodes and Terry Funk, and even here's the thing. Even when he got into WWE, again, I made the same case for Dusty, right? Even when their in-ring skills kind of had deteriorated a little bit physically, they were still cutting promos out there, with Shawn and Triple H, and even when he brought Charlotte into the, Charlotte gets in the mix, and he's cutting promos with her or whatever. But I know the easy answer, because I'm gonna take the easy answer off the table, like who his best promos against some of his biggest opponent was. Dusty's off the table because everybody would say I'm a homer for Dusty. My question became, there's a line delivered to one guy, Ricky Steamboat. Steamboat, you're a great wrestler, but you're not Ric Flair. Think about that. That's he literally was telling him, because Steamboat was think about it. He was carrying his kid, and he had his wife with him, and blah, 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 blah. Yeah, Ric Flair's bringing out, he's in a suit. He's got all these women with him, basically just saying, you're just not as good as me. I'm the Nature Boy Ric Flair. You're just you're a great wrestler, but that's all you are. That's heel promo work.
Yeah, that's beautiful. That is beautiful, and I don't think people do enough of that kind of thing today. There's good promos today, but I don't think there's anything like that. So
it's a good one. It's pretty good. Throw out some honorable mentions. We're not going to do a deep dive into these, but just there's some quick hits. Some honor. What?
I'm really this honorable mentions list is really good. There are a couple I felt that were left off. The ones we had on the list, Arn Anderson.
Mm-hmm.
What do you think?
He was that's the thing. I think the reason he stood out so well is the pairing with Ric Flair. Ric Flair gets up there and does the crazy, bah, 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 and then Arn is just kind of directly to the point. Here it is, and this is when he said things, it was almost factual, not this is what I think. It was this is what's going to happen, and
monster thick glasses.
By the way, had those glasses when I was younger growing up.
Oh man.
You got some kind of now that are like that.
I got the Ray-Bans. I might have to go get me some of those Arn specials that they sell.
Yeah. So that's kind of why we had Arn on the list. Randy Savage, of course.
Yep.
One of the best, dude. I don't half the time I was I don't know what he's saying, but he means that shit. That's what I always used to say with him. There were times he would just go off, and I'm I have no clue what he's talking about. But he was just one of the best. The thinking. He was really. Yeah, Savage is. Look, it struggled not to have him on the list, but being in the honorable mention. Of course, Bobby Heenan. I think have we? I know we've done. You know what? I'm not going to answer this question because this will be a top 10 list down the road, and I don't want to give away our answer. One of the best manager promo guys of all times, for sure, because he was funny. It spilled over into when he became in commentary. He absolutely was just one of the best.
Oh yeah.
Um,
Oh yeah. Nobody was better at being a just an insulting heel. Just his attitude. He was funny. He worked so well with Gorilla Monsoon.
yeah,
That was if I wanted if I wanted commentary on myself in heaven, that would be the two I would want there. Bobby was so special.
absolutely agree. Also, Roddy Piper, obviously, like one of the originals. Look, he had a whole segment, Piper's Pit, based
Yeah.
because of his promo skills. But leading up to like Mania, it's one of those like Hogan was there, but WrestleMania is not successful if you don't have a heel talking him into the building and make him hate him. Boom,
Oh yeah.
insert Roddy Piper, mission accomplished. So that's the honorable mentions. I know you had a couple that you said you maybe wanted.
We've said his name twice in this at least. It's Kevin Sullivan. I mean, Kevin Sullivan was one of the great artists. I can't think of anybody else off the top of my head right now, but I'm sure there's people that'll come back, to get us because we always forget when we put these lists together. There's always somebody we want to put on there. So, folks, if you've got an idea of somebody you like, what do they do, Nick?
Hey, look, put your list together, whether it's top 5, top 10, whatever you want to do. Make sure you're, tappedoutpod@gmail.com. If you're a Patreon member, absolutely just put that right there in the comment section. Because, look, we encourage you to sign up, patreon.com/tappedoutpod. You get the shows early, you get the bonus content. I mentioned it on the Tapped In show. I'd be remiss if I didn't mention it here. All of the reviews now from like the Raw, SmackDown, Tina, they have all moved. They are no longer on the free tier. They are now on the $1 level. I figured, hey, you got to get in at least to invest and get that $1 level for all those reports. Somebody was like, aren't you giving a lot of that stuff away for free? And I'm like, yeah, I see your point. So we've moved those over. But again, if you're the Patreon member there, boom, comment your list, email your list, tappedoutpod. Yeah, exactly. And remember, man, because when we're talking about, I think the great debate sometimes when it comes to mic work is some people get caught up like to me, it's about the character, like how they connect with the crowd, or that's a good promo. Not getting out there screaming and shouting and all that kind of stuff.
It depends on what your gimmick is, how you work
Sure.
it in. To me, how you, for lack of a way to put it, how you touch me. What do you do that reaches out and grabs me, makes me care about what you're doing on the mic, to make me come watch you? Like you said, talk them into the building, and it's a very individualized thing. And I think some of the new guys are really killing it. Are just really killing it right now. What do you think about LA Knight? I think he was been really popular in Europe.
He seemed to be. Look, my opinion, LA Knight's promos, I think he's really good, but because he's for a different demo. I think now there's a generation of wrestler. Like, I prefer a Cody Rhodes or an MJF, and I'll tell you why. They're talking and they're saying something. Look, Bully made a comment about Seth Rollins wouldn't be over if he didn't have the song. I'm like, there's some wrestlers I feel the same way about their promos. Why does LA Knight so hot? Because the fans like to chant along with LA Knight. If he doesn't have that kit, now some people would argue, well, so would The Rock be over if he wasn't, finally, and they're singing along or whatever. So I just think that the promo skills, to me, I lean more into what are you like talking versus I got some cool catchphrases. That's kind of where an LA Knight falls to me right now. I think he's a great wrestler, by the way. I think he's really good in the ring, but I think he's more of a catchphrase guy.
So you need a catchphrase, you need good music, you need personality, you need a little bit of everything to be the complete wrestler.
Sure.
Or sports entertainer, because I mean that's where it all is right now.
Correct. Yeah.
Indie guys, where would you put this? You would put an indie guy would need a good catchphrase, would need a good promo skill.
Promo skills are big, because here's the thing. I absolutely, look, we have talked about this on the Tapped In show multiple times. that I think the biggest kryptonite for a lot of indie talents are the promo skills. I think that's what separates the guys who really connect with the fans is they get in there and they think like, I'm going to be the greatest wrestler in the world. And I'm like, you're not even close, because, you know, you got to compare yourselves to a guy. Like, the problem is the casual fan base is comparing you to somebody they saw on TV, whether that's Bryan Danielson,
Penta,
Kenny Omega, Penta, whatever.
Yeah.
Insert any wrestler that you think is a great wrestler. That's why you got it. So you've got to figure out a way to connect with them on the promos. That's why this list to me was so important to go one of our first ones, is because you've got to connect on the mic.
Well, these people were all doing great promos, but they were all doing different promos.
Correct.
They weren't doing the same thing other people were doing, and that's what set them apart. And setting yourselves apart seems to be, this is my opinion, from what I've observed following independent wrestling and professional wrestling, is one of the keys to success is setting yourself apart, doing something different, and then doing it well.
Stop playing a wrestler. Be you turned up, you know, so that way it's genuine and it feels genuine versus you acting a part. I think that's kind of the kick.
Yeah.
So anyway, it is what it is. So that's our list. I mean, that's final thoughts. Again, we'd love to hear your thoughts and everything. tappedOutPod@gmail.com. Comment on the Patreon as well. We're heading down to another week of, you know, the road to WrestleMania. Hopefully my opinion changes by next week. We'll update you next week and let you know what I think after another episode of SmackDown and Raw. Maybe that's the case. You got anything else before we get out of here, man?
On our road to WrestleMania, by the time you hear this, it'll be 3 weeks. Can we do it, Nick? Can they do it? Can they sell us? What is this, 10 since we've been doing this, or 9?
We're creeping up on 9.
9 WrestleManias?
Oh, yeah, we would have done, because... Yeah, no, I'd have to do the math on it. August will be 9 years that we've done it. We've done the show, so there's that. So, you know, but we would have started after, so it would have been 8.
We've watched many more together, but this is
yeah.
So we're gonna look forward to this, another WrestleMania with our fans. I've loved every one of them with y'all, and let's get this together, folks.
Well, man, if that's all you got, what's the old saying, man? If I've got nothing and you've got nothing, what time is it?
It's time to tap out.